Can we start with reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for Sayyid Raza Rizvi, Yusuf Raza Rizvi, and for other Marhumi? Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله روحي وجسمي وأرواح العالمين لك الفداء يا مظلوم يا غريب يا شهيد بأرض كربلاء أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حملته أمه كرها ووضعته كرها وحمله وفصاله 30 شهرا صلوا على محمد وعلى اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد صلوات again please اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Last night I was talking about worship or ibadah and the importance of the soul, the stages of the soul and the journey of the soul in a very short way. It's a much longer and depth discussion. But I ended up by saying that spirituality is also connected with morality. That how we connect with Allah is also connected with how we connect with fellow human beings. The more goodly we become, the more godly we are. And I wanted to extend that discussion now by talking about something which is very important in the Quran and of course in Islam itself, of the family. Because the family is seen as a microcosm, the basis of a good society. After all, a society is made up of people, and people come together to form a family, families come together to form a society. And therefore, if we can build good people, good relations at home, hopefully that will transfer itself to a much better society. That's why the Quran places a lot of importance in society, and in particular about families. In our own countries, wherever we came from, whether it was Iraq, Africa, or Pakistan, India, the mahol, as we call it, the environment was very conducive to creating a good Islamic individual. The mosque was very vibrant. We had the madrasas. We had schools in which religion was taught. The environment was Islamic environment. So therefore, the importance of the family or the importance of the parents was not as significant. I'm not saying it was not, but it was not as significant as it is now here. Here, whereby the madrasa plays a minimal role, once a week maybe, even there for 2-3 hours. The schools certainly do not nurture spirituality or religion. And the family, everybody's on WhatsApp and Viber. So even that has gone out of the window. That's why the importance of the family itself becomes even more crucial, especially the parents. Indeed, it is interesting to know that the Quran itself denotes several key terms to show the importance of the family, what the family is. Because the family in the traditional way, let's not forget, was not just the mother and the father. It was also extended family. And therefore the Quran sometimes uses the word ashira, al, ahl al-bayt, as we have heard many a time. It uses dhil qurba, those who are close to you, and so on. In the West, we tend to think of the family as a father and the wife, and maybe 2 children and a dog or a cat. For them, that is part of the family. But for us, of course, we see that in Islam, in the Quran specifically, the family becomes so important that they come even before the yatim and the faqir and miskin. In the Quran says that إن الله يأمركم بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى, that you give the dhul qurba first. In other words, if there is somebody who is poor in your family, before you go out and give somebody who's poor outside, you give it to your family member first, because they take precedence, provided they are poor, but they take precedence over even the yatim and the miskin outside. If they are poor within your family, you give it to them first, because the family becomes the microcosm, as I said, of a good society. Indeed, the role that the family plays in creating a good society is seen in a very beautiful verse in Surah Al-Furqan, Surah number 25 in the Quran, of how by creating a good family, having good spouse, having good children, can help us to become the Imam of Muttaqeen. Not just a Muttaqi, but the Imam. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Ya Allah, give us from amongst our spouses and our offspring, our children, such good auspices that are a delight to our eyes. In other words, they become goodly for us. But the verse doesn't stop there. وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. That make us an imam for the muttaqeen, because of what we have at home. Because when a person, whether a woman or a man, when they are at peace at home, when they have the sukoon at home, then that peace and sukoon radiates in society. When you're not happy at home, you can't be happy outside, believe me. And therefore, that's why the importance of that family. Because the family is not only a family, it is not only related, but more importantly connected. Many a time, families are related. Hey, mera bhai hai, mera bahan hai. But we hardly even talk to them. They're in the same city. These days, of course, we don't even have an excuse because of all these cell phones, all these gadgets that we have. But even then, people don't have the time. This seems to be our enemy, the time. But when we want to, of course, we make the time when we want to. Yeah. The point being is this, that the family is not only related, but connected. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want Allah to increase your sustenance, remember this, you want Allah to increase your rizq, to give you long age and good health, then keep relations with your family members. One of the greatest sins in Islam, there is a list of great sins in Islam. Min al-Kaba'ir is this called. Among the great sins, shirk is one of them, lies is another, zina and so on. But amongst them is qat'ur rahm. Qat'ur rahm is the opposite of silatul rahm. It means to cut off the womb. It's interesting, this concept of womb in Islam, because the womb is central, because from the womb come the children and they become the family. Allah says in the Quran, I was saying this in the khutbah of Jum'ah, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. Allah has written rahmah on Himself. In other words, it is impossible to separate Allah from rahmah, because it is part of His essence. Wherever there is Allah, there is rahmah. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi rahmatika allati wasi'at kulla shay. You remember Dua al-Kumayl. I ask you by your rahmah, which is everywhere, which envelops and covers each and everything. That rahmah of Allah becomes the rahm of the mother. Have you noticed that the word womb in Arabic is rahm? Closely affiliated to rahmah. Why? Because the mother is the source of that mercy. Many a time you will find, no disrespect to the fathers, but the father is philandering, is drunk, or whatever it may be. But it's the steadfastness, the resolution of the mother which keeps the family intact. She says, you can do what you like outside, but I'm going to guide this family and these children. And she becomes the source of that mercy. Hence the womb becomes rahm. And one of the great sins is to cut off the womb, meaning not to sever the ties with those who came from the same womb as you did. Whether it is the brother, the sister, or even the cousins, because ultimately we are connected. And the Quran says not only should you be connected, you should be related also. In other words, you should be connecting with each other and being related to each other. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
If we were to pay close attention to the Quran, we see one remarkable thing. Not only does it emphasize the family, but it identifies and clearly indicates the core values with different members of the family. Wallahi, the Quran is very, very particular about the family. It talks about the importance of the family, yes, the womb and so on. But you will see, as I will show you, it identifies key values, core values, with different members of the family, depending on which member of the family it is talking about. So, to start with something that I've already talked about, the womb, the rahmah, and it goes further, that we as family members are not only supposed to be financially there for each other, emotionally there for each other, of course, we're supposed to be there for each other, but there's another dimension that we often forget, that we are supposed, as family members, to reset our moral compasses, moral alignment. You heard of wheel alignment. You know what happens when the wheel goes out of alignment? First of all, you have to get new tires because they're going in different directions. Sometimes members of a family do that also. They lose track of what is morally right and morally wrong. And therefore, one of the key elements of the family, the duties of a family member, is to morally align each other. When the father goes off track, the son or the daughter is supposed to remind the father. When it comes to Amr bil Ma'ruf, it doesn't matter. You can tell your father, you can even tell your grandfather. Of course, you have to tell them properly. And the father and the wife have to tell the children too. There's a very beautiful verse in the Quran. Again, most of what I have to say, you will find is coming from the Quran itself. It's in Surah Al-Naml, Surah number 27 in the Quran, where Sulaiman is walking with his army. You remember the story, Sulaiman is walking with the army, and the ants, they can see the army of Sulaiman. Nabi Sulaiman can hear and understand the language of the ants. So the head ant is telling the others, you better go in the holes, hide, because Sulaiman and his army is coming. فَتَبَسَّمَ Sulaiman. At that point, Sulaiman smiled. فقال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي. Oh my Lord, inspire me that I should thank you for your ni'mah, for your blessings that you have given to me and my parents. أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأنا عملا صالحا, and that I should do good deeds. But the verse doesn't stop there. Here comes the most crucial part of the verse. وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي. That reform me through my children. In other words, because of my children, I should be reformed too. How many times have we found that as I said, the parents go off track, the mother isn't wearing hijab, the father is going to nightclubs, and the children says, Dad, you shouldn't be doing that. My madrasa teacher told me this is wrong. In other words, when it comes to Amr bil Ma'ruf, we are supposed to morally align ourselves. And the Quran tells us that when you see somebody going off track, don't be scared to tell them. This is an important dimension not only between offspring and the parents, but also between the couple themselves. It is remarkable how the Quran shows us that a woman can be a more role model for a man. When it comes to role modeling, moral alignment, it's not only the man has to tell the woman off, she can tell him off too. Sometimes we see in the Quran that the only person who was allowed and able to see Maryam when she was in the temple was Zakaria. Zakaria enters the temple and he finds food there. And he's surprised. Anilaki hada? Where did this food come from, O Maryam? I'm the only one who is allowed to come and see you. At that time, Maryam replies, Hada min 'inda Allah. وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. This is from Allah. And Allah sustains whoever He wishes without any accountability. Allah doesn't have to account to anybody. At that time, Zakaria is so impressed, so touched by the piety of Maryam, that he goes and he asks for a dua too. That, oh Allah, give me a son who will be an offspring, who will be yarithuni wa yarju ala Yaqub, who will be an offspring of me and the children of Yaqub. When it comes to the parents themselves, the man and the wife, the Quran states, not only man and wife by the way, even between mu'mineen and mu'minat, between believing men and believing women. The Quran says, Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat ba'adhum awliya'u ba'ad. That the believing men and the believing women, so men and women are awliya to each other. What is awliya? Guardians, protectors. In other words, we morally protect each other. Why? Ya'muruna bil ma'ruf wa yanhawna 'anil munkar, the Quran says. Because they do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar to each other. What is amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar? We tend to think of, oh, do this and don't do that. It's more than that, my sisters and brothers. Amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar is the core message of Imam Hussein, the core message of the Quran. It means it prevents moral suicide. There are different kinds of suicide. In other words, those who are morally strong help those who are morally weak. That's amr bil ma'ruf. So when a member of your family is weak, morally weak, is doing something wrong, then another member, whether it's male or female, it doesn't matter, must go and correct him and help him out. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
And look at the power of the family. That when a husband is so arrogant that he completely goes off track, not willing to listen at all, the Quran gives us an example of a woman who was so steadfast, despite the husband claiming not only to be off track, but claiming to be God himself. I'm talking about Fir'aun here. Talking about Fir'aun, we know the story. But Allah loved the story so much of Asiya that He put it in the Quran without mentioning her name. وَذَبَرَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah gives an example for those who believe. For whom? Which example? Imra'atu Fir'aun, the wife of Fir'aun. إِذْ قَالَتْ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي إِنَّكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Oh my Lord, build me a house in Jannah. This was the dua of the wife of Fir'aun. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. And save me from Fir'aun and his actions. In other words, dissociate me from Fir'aun and his action. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And save me from a community which is zalim. In other words, even though Fir'aun may threaten everybody, but this woman will not deviate or swerve from the right path. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
We find another example also in the Quran regarding how to parent. So far I've been talking about Amr bil Ma'ruf in general. But the Quran shows us how to sit with our children, how to talk with them, how to discuss with them. And here we find the story of Luqman. I wonder if we ever do this. Luqman is Surah number 31, we recited it yesterday. إِذْ قَالَ Luqman, when Luqman said to his son, يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُسَعِرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. Do not turn your cheek insolently for the people. In other words, don't be arrogant. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْكُلَّ مُخْتَالَ الْفُخُورِ. Because Allah does not love anybody who is arrogant or vain. And then he continues, Luqman continues, look how careful he is when it comes to giving the wasiyah, that is advice to his son. وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. You know, some people, they are so arrogant, even when they walk arrogantly. They thump the ground. You wonder what the ground has done wrong to them. The Luqman says, do not walk arrogantly on the earth, because Allah does not love those who are arrogant. The Quran delineates another core value when it comes to the man and the woman, the husband and the wife. And again here, the key core value is what? It is peace and tranquility. The husband and the wife are supposed to create a peaceful atmosphere at home, a tranquil atmosphere at home. As the Quran says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. Amongst the signs of God, it's remarkable, Allah here is talking amongst His signs. Amongst the sign of God is that He has created a spouse from amongst you. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Not only did He create a spouse, He brought something to attract you, something to be together, to bring you two together, which is mawadda and rahma. Again, the core value of rahma. Mawadda is affection. Outer affection must be based on inner rahma. You cannot show affection to somebody whom you do not love, my friend. Otherwise, that is hypocrisy. Mawadda and rahma. And وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً ذَلِكَ. This is an ayat for those who have taqwa. But the Quran goes even further. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So that you may live and reside. In other words, live in sukoon. The Quran goes further than that. When it comes to the relationship between a man and a woman. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. Again, family values. The Quran says they are a clothing to you and you are a libas to them. Why does the Quran use the term libas? What do clothes do? They give us shelter. They protect us. And above all, they give us comfort. Comfort is very important. If the husband knows that whatever difficulties he may have had outside, but when he comes home, he finds a smiling wife, he finds a comforting wife, that makes a whole big difference to him. And it works the opposite way also, by the way. When the wife comes home, she shouldn't face a very angry jihad looking Taliban. She has also supposed to be, he's supposed to be there for her too, giving her the solace. That's why, by the way, one of the great things about the Prophet was that he remembered Khadija long after she died. And Bukhari is telling us that Aisha used to get very jealous. Khadija, why do you remember that Khadija? She was an old woman. I'm young, I'm much more pretty. That's what she used to say. Bukhari is telling us. And the Prophet says, never ever say anything against Khadija. Because she was there for me when everybody turned against me. When I was being pelted with stones, with bananas and dirt outside, I always used to go back to the embracing and loving arms to Khadija. That's what Khadija meant. This is what we mean by sukoon and tranquility at home. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Another key element in the family the Quran identifies and emphasizes are seniors. Seniority, grandparents. In this culture, the older you get, the more lonely you become. I don't know whether you agree with me or not, but in the West in general, I'm not talking about our community, in general, they dump you to a nursing home or senior citizens home. Why does the Quran put so much emphasis on the seniors? Because they are the most vulnerable in society. Just like children, they become vulnerable too. And therefore, the Quran says in Surah Banu Israel, إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحْدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا. If one of them or both of them attain kibar, the Quran uses a particular term here. Kibar means senior, big, from the word kabir. Senior in age. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ, as we've heard many times. Don't say off to them. You know what is off in Arabic? Off is the lowest form of disrespect. Just like saying that is an off. The Quran says don't even say that to them. Because you will hurt them. You see, the key core value when it comes to dealing with seniors is what in the Quran? Dignity. Deal with them with dignity and deal with them with humility. وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Do not mock them. Do not ridicule them. You know, sometimes when people become old, they become difficult too. They want this, they want that, they want attention, they want... It's okay. Because you remember that verse that I will recite in a few minutes about the dua that we recite. But the Quran says, وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. And when you speak to them with karamat. Karamat means what? Dignity. It means do not look down upon them, do not mock them, do not do anything which will hurt them. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا. This is the verse I've been talking about. That say, oh Lord, have mercy on them the way that they had mercy on me. This is not only a dua, by the way. It is a reminder to ourselves that we should have mercy on them the way that they treated me when I was young. In other words, that mercy is not something that I'm doing a favor to them. I'm returning a favor to them. I'm not doing a favor to them. The way that they were merciful to me, I should be merciful to them. رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا. صلوا على محمد وآله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The Quran doesn't stop there. Look again at the importance of the relationship with the seniors. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الظُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. And lower, remember the key core value with seniors? Humility, dignity. Lower the wings of humility to them. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الظُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Out of that sense of mercy, be humble to them. And then وَقُلْ لَهُمَا and then say to them that رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا يَرْبَيَانِ صَغِيرًا, as I've said. What is this wings of humility? Imam al-Sadiq was asked, and he says that when a bird comes to eat in front of the mother, the wings are no longer flapping. The wings are straight down because of to show its respect and humility in front of the mother. That is the wing of humility the Quran is talking about. Therefore, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam also says, and remember this, my sisters and brothers, it's a very beautiful hadith. He says, your children are watching you. Remember that. If you mistreat your parents today, they will mistreat you tomorrow. If you answer them back today, they will answer you tomorrow, and they'll say, Daddy, Mommy, we saw how you treated your mother, so why are you complaining now? You put them in nursing home today, you will be in nursing home tomorrow too. Remember how you treat your children. Another key core value that the Quran identifies, we've talked about the husband and the wife, the seniors, and the other one is also of the children itself, the youth. That we should be doing things together. That we should always be praying for our children. We are living in an atmosphere which is frankly what we call spiritually challenged. Spirit or spirituality is very much lacking in the West. And therefore, here is the Quran telling us that when you do things, do it with your children together. Even in prayers, pray with your children. رَبِّ اجْعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةَ وَذُرِّيَّتِي. This is Ibrahim praying. Oh my Lord, make me amongst those who pray, and also my children too. When Ibrahim builds the Kaaba, we all know it's in the Quran. He does not build it alone. Who does he build it with? With Ismail. Today we call it bonding, whatever we may call it. But he makes sure that he does it with his son Ismail. And when he's asked, إِنِّي جَعَلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا, Allah says to Ibrahim that I'm going to make you an imam for the people. What is his first dua? Or first question, to be exact? وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. How about my offspring? In other words, he's so concerned about his offspring that he is not only concerned about himself, but how I do things with my children. And that's why, by the way, in Arab culture, until today, you will notice that the father is known through the son, the mother is known through the daughter, and vice versa. Therefore, the father, normally in Arab culture, you don't address him by his name. You say Abu so-and-so, Abu Hassan, Abu Ali, Abu Hussein, and so on. The father of Hussein. Why? Because it is assumed there is such a strong bonded connection between the two. Even the son is known through the father. Ibn so-and-so, Ibn Ali, and so on. Ibn Muhammad. And the mother is called Ummul Hind, for example. Kulthum, and vice versa. Because there is a clear connection, close connection between the children and the parents. In our culture, I do not know whether it was happening in Pakistan, but in Swahili, when a child misbehaved, we used to say, amekosa adabu, which literally means he or she has missed out on manners. In other words, there's been some problem in this parvarish, in the tarbiyah. There's something is missing here. He's not been taught how to, good manners, how to grow up and speak to others. There is something also that we should understand. In our culture today, the Quran pays a lot of importance to the youth too, by the way. It gives the example of Ashabul Kahf. These were young youths. Surah number 18 is Surah Al-Kahf, whereby the youth, they are so appalled by their own society, by a tyrannical ruler, that they leave the society and go and stay in a cave. You remember the story, I don't need to go into details. But these are the youths, and Allah loved their acts so much that He made them an ayat, a sign of Allah, up to the end of time, mentioning them in the Quran. That how Allah can freeze time for those who are pious. These youths slept in that cave for over 300 years. It's in the Quran, it's not only in Hadith. And yet Allah made it a sign. But in today's world, our youth, I'm talking more particularly about Shia youth, are more and more alienated from our society. We may not realize it. I teach in the universities. I know what they're going through. First of all, we have this ethnic mosque in many cities. You have a Lebanese mosque, I don't know, Iranian mosque, Afghani mosque, Khoja mosque, Pakistani mosque, Irani mosque. I don't know if we have actually an Islamic mosque anywhere. We have all these different ethnic mosques, and when a youth goes to this center, he or she is not able to identify with fellow Shias or fellow Muslims from a different ethnic community. Therefore, they feel alienated many a time. Not only that, we build mosques. Alhamdulillah, in Toronto where I reside, we built a beautiful mosque, huge, humongous, over $20 million. But we still find the youth are not coming. Right? We built, complex, we have gymnasium, we have volleyball, we have volleyball, everything for them, soccer pitch, but they're not there. The reason is this, my sisters and brothers, we build the outside, we don't build the inside. Yeah. We build buildings, we build structures, but we do not build the minds and the souls of those who are going to occupy those buildings. And therefore, they told me very plainly, says we cannot understand what the guy is saying. Okay, we've changed the language now. He doesn't speak Urdu anymore. He doesn't speak Gujarati, it's English. We've changed the language, but we don't change the substance. They want to know, they want to hear things which they can connect with, which connects the mosque with the outside world. Not the age-old stories repeating themselves again and again, because the youths cannot identify themselves. Remember this much, sisters and brothers. This is the important message, that if we want to transmit Islam to the next generation, then we must make sure that we do it in a way that they will keep that Islam. Many times today, these Jews are called unmosqued Muslims. They are Muslims, but they don't go to the mosque, hardly ever. You see them when somebody dies, you see them at a wedding time, you see them in Muharram, and you don't see them again. Primarily because we are not connecting with them. Not only are they alienated in the mosque, they are alienated in the universities too. If these so-called MSAs are actually SSAs, they are not Muslim Student Association, they are Sunni Student Association. I'm sorry to tell you, but it is the truth. Because the moment they know that you are Shia, you are out. Absolutely. Because a lot, I'm not saying, I'm talking about this community, you don't know about University of Arizona, but in most campuses, they are dominated by this Salafi Wahhabi thinking. I have been teaching at my university for, this is my 7th year now. 7th year. But not even once have they invited me to speak at their function because they know I'm Shia. On the contrary, I'm just trying to show you how our youth get so many problems in the universities themselves. On the contrary, these students, they're telling each other, and I know this for sure, that do not take Takim's classes. Not because he's a bad professor, not because he gives F minuses, but because he's Shia. And I know this because the students came and told me. This is the kind of discrimination that we are talking of right here. We're not talking of Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, here within our own midst. That's why I'm saying that we need to nurture our youth. Welcome them here, talk to them about issues and languages and substance that they can relate to. My sisters and brothers, what I'm about to say, I've said it before, I know. Some of you may remember it, but sometimes it's important to remind ourselves. And again, I'm not addressing only the community here. I do not know about here. I'm talking very generally. I say this everywhere I go. More and more we find our youth are marrying outside the community. More and more. Because we don't give them a platform to interact within the community. We don't have a problem if our boys or our girls go and talk to John and Elizabeth outside. But if our girl is talking to Bakir or Muhammad, Qiyamah ho gaya, huh? We have a problem. It's Qiyamah now. It's as if a father drops a daughter called Zainab, for example. He drops her at a university and he says, Zainab, you know there's Bakir, there's John and there's Paul. You can interact with them. You can interact and talk with them, but you can't marry them because they're not Muslims. And the same father drops the same Zainab at the mosque. Say, Betty, you see there's Ali, there's Muhammad, there's Zayd. You cannot interact with them. Astaghfirullah. You cannot talk to them. They are Shias, but you must marry one of them. It's not going to happen. We have to realize and open our eyes. The Sharia has given us enough leeway whereby our youth can interact with each other within the framework of the Sharia without violating it. Talking, discussing in a proper, what we call controlled environment. So that at least they meet each other. 25% of the marriages I do perform marriages. 25% are with outsiders. I don't mind if our youth marries somebody who comes to Islam. We say ahlan wa sahlan. Of course we welcome anybody to Islam. But when somebody becomes a Muslim 5 minutes before marriage, and then you never see them again, you start wondering, instead of them coming to Islam, they take our youth away from Islam. That's where the danger lies. And that's why we must open our eyes to the challenges. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
When it comes to interacting with parents, again the Quran identifies a key core value. We've talked about different kinds of family members. When it comes to the parents, there's another key value, which I mentioned again in the khutbah today, in the Jummah. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَنْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. Your Lord has decreed that you worship only Him. And in the same verse, without even a comma or a full stop, there's no comma in Arabic, by the way, the verse continues, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنَ إِحْسَانًا. And you will do ihsan to your parents. Ihsan does not mean in Arabic what it means in our language, to do a favor. You can never ever do a favor to your parents after what they've done to you. It means to give them what is due to them, to actually show the respect and the love, however bad they may be, what they deserve out of us. And not only that, the Quran places even more importance on the mother, because the mother is the one who keeps that family together. The mother is the one who goes through the pains of carrying a child, giving birth, and then weaning the child. And the Quran reminds us of that too. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ, that we have given admonition to the human being of his parents. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. The mother has carried the child with great difficulties, and then gave birth with great difficulty. We, that is men, we never quite realize this, because we don't carry children. We don't give birth. Sometimes we are golfing while she's in the hospital. Huh? But the Quran reminds us of the difficulties that the mother goes through. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ ثَلَاثُونَ شَهْرًا. And the total period of carrying the child and giving birth and weaning and suckling the child is 30 months. And therefore the Quran pays so great importance to the parents themselves. As the Quran tells us that أَنَشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ. The Quran says, you, human beings, must thank me, that is Allah, and your parents. It's as if the Quran is connecting, thanking Allah with thanking parents, saying, if you cannot thank your parents, how can you thank Allah? You cannot thank your parents after what they have done for you. You see them, they do everything for you. You cannot thank them. How can you thank Allah? And there's a key and important note for us. There's a beautiful hadith of Uwais al-Qarni. Uwais was a Sahabi of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Uwais is a different kind of Sahabi, because he never met the Prophet. He used to live in Yemen. But he heard of the Prophet and he wanted to go and meet the Prophet. But it is reported that his mother said, no, you cannot go. Uwais did not go to meet the Prophet to Medina. When he was asked why, he says, going to do the ziyarah of the Prophet is a sunnah, but listening to my mother is a wajibat. Looking after her is a wajibat. That is mustahab, no doubt. It's very important to meet the Prophet. I'm not saying it's not. But there is a difference between what is mustahab, a sunnah, and a wajibat. Looking after your mother in her old age is a wajibat. And I want to end with, before I go into Masail, with this particular anecdote, which I find very, very inspiring, about the parents and the role of the parents in bringing up the children, and the close connection between the parents and the children, which the Quran itself identifies. That when Maryam alayhi salam, she goes outside Jerusalem, we all know the story, I will not go into details. She comes back with a child, and the people are surprised. The people are surprised, where did this child come from? Everybody would have been surprised. Certainly a very good, chaste woman goes and she comes back with a child. So they ask, Anila ki hadi, where did this child come from? What is interesting is the verses that these people, at the time of Maryam, what they say to her. Ma kana abuki mrusuin, wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. They immediately connect Maryam with her parents. Your father was not an evil man. Your mother was a chaste woman. Where did the child come from? In other words, they say, you have come from a noble lineage, from a good upbringing. Your parents were so good. How come you have done such an act? You see how they connect the acts of Maryam with the parents. And it was important at that time that Isa alayhi salam spoke. Because if Maryam said that this is a supernatural child, nobody would have believed her. Huh? In our language we say, go and take a hike. Nobody would have believed her. The only way that they could believe her is if he spoke, the one in the cradle. Because by speaking, not only he's showing a mu'jiza, but he's saving the chastity of his mother. And therefore, فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ, she pointed to him, قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. How can we talk to a child in the cradle? At that time, Isa spoke. And what does he say? قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ, I am the servant of Allah. By the way, by him saying, إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ, he destroys Trinity immediately. I am not God. I am not the son of God. I am the Abdullah. I am the servant of Allah. أَعْتَانِيَ الْكِتَابَ وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. Allah has given me a book and made me a prophet at the age of, right from the cradle, not the age of 40. وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. And then he continues, وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And then the key word, amongst the things that Allah has asked me to do, Isa is saying right from the cradle, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي. And then I should do bar to my mother. He couldn't say my parents because he did not have a father. What is this bar? A bar is an act of goodness, an act of good doing, a beautiful deed. That as long as I'm alive, I should be dutiful to my mother. The Prophet was asked, what is this birr? And birr, the Quran is saying. He says, that act of beauty which survives the dior. In other words, even when your parents are dead, you continue doing the birr to your parents. The 2 rak'ah salat that you pray between Maghrib and Isha, that is part of birr also. You plant a tree out of which people eat fruits, that is birr in their name. You build a madrasa, build a mosque, anything which others benefit from in the name of your parents. The Prophet says, birr does not end when they die, that birr ends when you die. Because for as long as you are alive, you have to do something good for your parents. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Azadarana Hussein, the time has come for us to talk about the events in Karbala and after Karbala. One of the great personages in Karbala who we hardly ever talk about or hear about is Kulthum. Kulthum was actually a widow. She was married to Muhammad bin Ja'far al-Tayyar, the brother of Abdullah. In many ways, We get the story of the last night of Imam Ali from Kulthum. Her actual name was also Zainab. Zainab al-Sughra. The other one that we know of Zainab was Zainab al-Kubra. And Kulthum was a very powerful speaker, very close to Imam Hussein. It's most unfortunate that we do not pay enough attention to Kulthum. It is reported that Kulthum was so pious. She was so pious that the scholars agree themselves that she was mahfuz min al-khata, as we say. She was free from error. She was not a ma'asum. We do not accept her as a ma'asum or a ma'asuma, but she was free from error. She was of the highest level of piety. And she died in Damascus. But when the Kafila enters Kufa, the first person to speak was this Kulthum. Later on, maybe Zainab spoke, yes, but Kulthum also spoke. And the way that she spoke, that she addressed the people of Kufa. The people of Kufa, when the Kafila entered, were joyous. They were celebrating. They did not know who these people were. Who are these people who have come from somewhere in the middle of the desert? Kulthum tells them to keep quiet. And then she says, do you know who we are? We are the grandchildren of that Muhammad that you say is your prophet. In our house the Quran was revealed. Why have you killed our men for? That head that you see there is the head of Hussein ibn Ali. This is the grandson of the prophet. The people of Kufa were shocked. And she said, then why have you killed us? What sins have we committed? It is said that she spoke so powerfully that even the men started weeping. The women started tearing off their frocks. They started beating themselves on the head. Says, my God, is this what our men have done to the family of the Prophet? This was Kulthum. To the extent that the people wept so much in Kufa that they have never seen people of Kufa cry so much as they cried after the khutbah of Kulthum. Azadar al-Hussein, the people of Kufa at one point were giving out dates and bread as sadaqah to the children. When they saw the state of the children, of the young children, of Sakina and the other children, they were giving them sadaqah. At that time, Kulthum intervened. He says, do not give them sadaqah, we are Ali Rasul. We are the family of the Prophet. Sadaqah is haram for us. Azadar al-Hussein, there are reports which says that after the events of Karbala, when the wife of Zuhair was not in Karbala, but she heard what happened in Karbala, she gave a kafan to her slave. And she says, oh slave, go to Karbala and put this kafan on your master. That is on Zuhair bin Qayyim. Shroud him and bury him. After a little while, the slave came back with that kafan intact. And she says, why were you disobedient? Why didn't you give kafan to Zuhair? She says, oh Bibi, if you would have seen what I have seen in Karbala, you would not have given shroud to your own husband. How could I give kafan to Zuhair? And Hussein was lying there. Abbas was lying there. There was no kafan on them. Azadar and Hussein, look at the Mazlumiyah and the difficulties that the Ahl Muhammad had. Yesterday I was talking about them leaving Karbala. Abu Mikhnaf is telling us that at one point the Kafila, when they reached Kufa, a person by the name of Sahl says, in the same year I came back from Makkah, from Hajj. As I entered Kufa, I heard people were celebrating. People were actually in good mood. I entered Kufa, I was shocked and I was surprised. There was a group of people, women without hijab, men there, and they were all walking and crying. As I looked around more, I saw some heads at the end of spears being paraded around the streets of Kufa. I looked carefully and I recognized one of the heads was the head of Hussein ibn Ali. The head of Hussein was at the end of the spear. I looked around more and I recognized a young boy by the name of Zain-al-Abideen, Ali ibn al-Hussein. I went up to him and I said, Mawla, I'm one of yours. I'm one of those who love the Ahlul Bayt. Can I do something for you at this stage? Imam Zain-al-Abideen looked at Sahl and said, Sahl, do you have any money? Sal says, I was surprised, what does the Imam want to do with money now? I said, yes, what do you want me to do? Imam says, take some money and give it to that person who is holding the spear at the end of which is my father's head. Tell him to move somewhere else. I said, Mawla, why should he move somewhere else? He said, don't you realize that just beneath the spear is Zainab and Kulthum? When the people look at the head of my father, their gaze also falls on Zainab and Kulthum. They do not have any hijab. Azadarana Hussein. Hi, when the Kafilah entered the Darbar of Ibn Ziyad, the Darbar of Ibn Ziyad took his cane, his stick, and he started playing with the lips of Hussein. Abu Mikhnaf says that when Ibn Ziyad did this, a person by the name of Zayd bin Arqam stood up and he said, Ibn Ziyad, take away that cane and stick away from those lips of Hussein. Because wallahi, I have seen with my own eyes, the Prophet was kissing the lips of Hussein. How can you play with those same lips? As Zainab was giving the khutbah in the Darbar of Ibn Ziyad, a person by the name of Abdullah ibn Afif, Abdullah could not see. He was blinded in the battle of Siffin, but he could hear, he could feel. Abdullah stood up in front of everybody and he says, oh people, tell me, has Qiyamah arrived today? Has Qiyamah arrived? They said, Abdullah, why are you asking? He says, I can hear the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I can hear the words of Ali. They said, Abdullah, this is not Ali, this is Zainab bint Ali speaking. He said, what is Zainab doing here? He told Zainab is in prison. This is the head of Hussein. Zainab and the Kafilah, the Ahlul Bayt are here as prisoners. Abdullah says, oh people, where are your consciences? I cannot see, but I can feel. Give me my sword. I will fight against these people. Azadarana Hussein, my majlis is over. But this much I will tell you, the Sheikh Mufid says that when the Kafilah was released from Damascus, we'll read the story of Damascus tomorrow inshallah, but when the Kafilah is released from Damascus, when they enter Karbala, Zainab goes and cries on the grave of Hussein, oh my brother, that amanat that you gave me is lying in the sands of Damascus. Sakina is there no more. But as the Kafilah is about to leave Karbala to go back to Medina, Zainab is making sure that everybody is mounted on the camels. But she finds there is one camel which is empty. Nobody is on that particular camel. Zainab is looking around now. She is concerned. She is worried. Where is this one person? She looks around and she sees a tent in which a woman is crying. Zainab enters the tent. She says, Ya Rabah, we are leaving for Medina. Come with us to Medina. Rabah says, Bibi, how can I go? My little Asghar is lying here. I will not go anywhere. Rabah stayed for 1 whole year in Karbala crying for Ali Asghar. ألا لعنة الله إلى القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منكر ماتم يا حسين
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين आगे आगे आ जाओ يا حسين 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 يا حسين
राज दुलारा ज़हरा का राज दुलारा ज़हरा का ज़ख्मी है और प्यासा है राज दुलारा ज़हरा का राज दुलारा ज़हरा का ज़ख्मी है और प्यासा है बूंद नहीं है पानी की بوند نہیں ہے پانی کی، خون کا دریا بہتا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، گیتی اونچی ہوتی ہے، گیتی اونچی ہوتی ہے، گرنے نہ دے گی گھوڑے سے، سی اونچی ہوتی ہے، گرنے نہ دے گی گھوڑے سے، اپنی گود میں لے لے گی، اپنی گود میں لے لے گی، کس کی گود کا پالا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، راہ خدا میں جلدی کی، راہ خدا میں جلدی کی، آگے جانے والوں نے، راہ خدا میں جلدی کی، آگے جانے والوں نے، صبح کے ساتھی چھوڑ گئے، شام ہوئی اب تنہا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، اکبر و قاسم کوئی نہیں، اکبر و قاسم کوئی نہیں، آس بندھے تو کس سے بندھے، اکبر و قاسم کوئی نہیں، آس بندھے تو کس سے بندھے، دریا چھیننے والا بھی دریا چھین کے سوتا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، خون کی ندی ایسی بہی، خون کی ندی ایسی بہی، صبح سے لے کر شام تلک، خون کی ندی ایسی بہی، صبح سے لے کر شام تلک، چاند نبی کا ڈوب گیا، سورج ڈوبنے والا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، حلق پہ تیغ قاتل ہے، حلق پہ تیغ قاتل ہے، جان پیغمبر سجدے میں، حلق پہ تیغ قاتل ہے، جان پیغمبر سجدے میں، دونوں عالم سجدے میں، دونوں عالم سجدے میں، کیسا پیارا سجدہ ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، تاج دلارا زہرا کا، زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے، بوند نہیں ہے پانی کی، خون کا دریا بہتا ہے،
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, آپ دیکھیں، Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں، ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں، ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. طوق ہے وزنی گلے میں، طوق ہے وزنی گلے میں، پاؤں میں ہے بیڑیاں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. مارنا ظالم تو کوڑے کچھ تو کر خوف خدا. مارنا ظالم تو کوڑے کچھ تو کر خوف خدا. بے کسوں لاوارثوں کا، بے کسوں لاوارثوں کا ہے اکیلا پاسباں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. دیکھ لیتے ہیں کبھی عابد جو بابا کی طرف، دیکھ لیتے ہیں کبھی عابد جو بابا کی طرف. اس وقت باقر کی اٹھ جا، اس وقت باقر کی اٹھ جاتی بنی سے ایڑیاں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. لے چلے ہیں قید کر کے ثانی زہرا کو شام. لے چلے ہیں قید کر کے ثانی زہرا کو شام. منزل زہرا کہاں، عظمت زہرا کہاں، شام کی منزل کہاں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. ہر قدم پر رو رہا ہے ایک بیمار ناتواں. یا حسین 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 حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین حسین یا 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 حسین حسین یا 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 حسین. محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله يا خاتم النبيين. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا محمد الحسن بن علي أيها الزكي الناصح الأمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين بن علي أيها الغريب المظلوم الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام عليكم يا أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم يا نصار الحسين. السلام عليكم يا أزواج الحسين. السلام عليكم يا ذريات الحسين. السلام عليك يا أخت الحسين زينب بنت أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أئمة الهدى يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى الرضا الغريب الغرباء ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. الأمان 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 من فتن الزمان. سيدي عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Welcome to read the ayah, to make dua to the 6 people. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا